about comparing past and present is to look on the good sides and to see what we do have here that is great and build on that. There's a lot of bad stuff to be looking at, but to focus on the good and build on it.
So, you know what, maybe we'll leave the mic for a second with you and we'll start this way, the next question. You know, there's a song in Hebrew that goes, I talk in Hebrew, I eat in Hebrew, I love in Hebrew, but at night I dream in Spanish. So I'm wondering if you three dream at night in Swedish, or did you make the switch?
I still count in Swedish. When I have to remember phone numbers and digits, and when there's a code sent on the phone, I say it in Swedish. I dream in Hebrew. I speak Hebrew and English, much better than Swedish.
Speak better Hebrew than Swedish?
Much, yeah. I mean, if we had this conversation in Swedish, I'd be the slowest speaker, and I wouldn't be having so much fun. No, English and Hebrew. So counting and the occasional swear word.
You want to tell us your favorite Israeli swear word, as long as we're in the subject?
Oh, there's quite a repertoire, I would say. There's a lot. And when you mix in Arabic, it's even better. So you get quite a breadth of swear words, and it's cultural. It's great. I won't say which one. But,
Miriam, do you dream in Swedish?
I think I dream in images, like it's like a muted movie. But if there is talk, it would be in Hebrew, because it's just part of my daily life now. I speak Hebrew at home, with my partner, at work, with my kids. I also speak Hebrew, even though I should be consistent in Swedish. But yeah, there's Hebrew in the dreams.
The kids speak Swedish with you sometimes? Or
they never answer me in Swedish.
So you talk in Swedish, but they answer in Hebrew?
Yeah.
Do you consider that a success of the Aliyah or maybe a failure?
That's a failure on my part right now that I need to change, that I need to work with. They're 5.5 and 2.5, so I think there's hope. But that's on me. I want them. Right now, they're more Israeli than Swedish, and I do want them to have more Swedish in them, have more of a connection to Sweden.
They were both born here.
They were both born here. Yeah.
And have they been to Sweden?
We've been each year. There was Corona for 2 years, so that we missed out. But we've been each year. My mother has been here, but there hasn't been a long period of time. We need a stretch. I need a stretch of a year in Sweden.
Josef, do you dream in Sweden?
I'm not sure about that. I curse in Hungarian, in Swedish, in English, and in Arabic occasionally. I'm not sure about the dreams. My wife is Danish, and she's here. My mother-in-law is here as well. So maybe I dream in Danish, maybe. I'm not sure. I have to think about it. I'm not sure.
Tell me a little bit about business in Israel, and especially in the last year or so. Do you see a difference? Do you have maybe a warning for Israel in that sense? I mean, we have the fear that we're losing on all grounds. We're losing our name, we're losing our recognition, we're losing our friends maybe in the world. Are we making too much of it?
So you know how to make a small fortune in Israel, you come with a big one, right? I think that the Israeli economy is actually amazingly doing quite well. I'm not saying we're doing good as a country, we are in a terrible situation now, but we don't need to get depressed, but for sure the economy itself is doing quite well. The GDP is doing well. The shekel has not been falling apart, which is kind of weird, right? There's a war, but the economy itself is doing quite well. Now there's another question whether foreign investors still find Israel as an attractive country to invest in. And I think that the case is that it is still so. Just the last 3 months where there is a war going on, there are still major investments done in Israel. There are funds investing in Israel from abroad. So I don't think that we have come to a situation that the economy is falling apart. And that's quite a miracle. We had an investment coming in the week after we were hit by drones from Iran. Now, which other normal country would have investors coming in after being hit by drones from Iran? I don't know. So maybe we got used to it. But for sure,
They came out.
both the drones and the investments, yes. The investments landed, the drones didn't really hit the ground.
Miriam, do you see, I'm sure as a photographer, the conflict is interesting, that's for sure, but are you worried about what's happening here the last year? And as an expat, what do you hear and what do you see from back home, from people, from voices you hear?
In the past year, we're talking before October 7th, all the protests.
Let's say past year and a half, and especially the past half a year, past 8 months.
So before October 7th, when during all the protests against the judicial reform, I was out shooting all those protests, and we had a few talks with my partner. And this was the first time that we talked about, is this where we want our kids to grow up? Is this where we want to stay? I read somewhere that during this period there was applications for foreign passports for Israelis grew with like 30%. Everybody started working on their foreign passports.
More like 300% now, I think.
I'm sure, of the Plan B. So at that point, we were a bit worried about where this country is going with the government that we have right now. I don't know if that's kosher to say here, but
everything is kosher.
After October 7th, though, I did feel, we had a few days of thinking of, should we leave, should we stay? And in the end, we did stay. We didn't go to Sweden. We also have a shelter in our apartment. So we live in Tel Aviv, Givatayim. We did feel safe enough to stay, and I am happy that we did stay. I do feel like there was a huge wave of togetherness all of a sudden from this like rift that was there a few months before, that how everybody came together here and everybody helped in any way they could. And I had a few friends that left for Sweden, and I felt much safer here. I felt that I'm with my people. And in Sweden, there are many more protests against Israel. There's much more of an against us feeling. So this is our place right now.
So you say ultimately you feel safer here than back in Sweden?
It's a different type of safety. There they don't have rocket alarms, I would feel unsafe walking with my kids in the street and they answer me in Hebrew. I would feel unsafe. So right now, this is, on the day-to-day basis, this is where I do feel safe.
Just one more question regarding that subject. You said some of your friends left Israel.
They came back.
And they came back,
Yeah.
okay. So tell me a little bit about the discussion between your sort of community of Swedish friends. Like, I'm sure the subject came up. What did you say to each other? What did they tell you?
The first few days was just pure shock and panic. What do we do? Do we leave? Do we stay? Do we leave? Do we stay? Who's on the the Swedes had an evacuation flight. Who's on the list to be evacuated? And there was, I think there was a stress also. We were stressing each other out. This family left for Sweden. No, this family will go. Now this. But I think it was just for everybody, it was a sense of just, this is something new. This is unknown to us. Nobody really knew what to do.
You feel they know more right now? I mean, are your friends like you now, feeling that this is their home, or they're still wondering whether they can make it?
The ones that left for a few months, all of them came back. All of them came. This is their life.
So they all feel this is home.
Yes, I'm pretty sure.
It's nice to hear. Jonathan, you're obviously more years here, and you said your father is
No, my mother's
Your mother
Israeli.
is
My father is very Swedish,
okay,
but my mother's Israeli.
You see the way Israel is being approached all over the world. Tell me a little bit about the difference. Like if I tell you Israel on what is it now, May 2024, Israel May 23, or May 22. What strikes you as different?
So I chatted today with an Israeli journalist, radio. He wanted for me to comment on the state of Israeli diplomacy and the activities of the foreign minister, specifically on Twitter. I don't know if anybody of you have seen.
Israel Katz, he made
Yes.
quite a few weird remarks on Twitter.
Yeah, to put it mildly. And I said, sure, yeah, I mean, I'm not afraid. I'm not politically affiliated. I don't care if he likes me, if the prime minister likes me. Couldn't care less. And I care about Israel's standing in the world, and I care about how we're perceived as a country, as a military. And I definitely feel that we should be doing better. To compare 2 years from today to now, big difference. In general, I would say that our diplomatic efforts, our public relations, sorry to be blunt, but they're shit. And that there really is an urgent need to look at it differently. Now, I don't want this to be a downer of a conversation. So there's a positive example. And I was thinking of, okay, how can Israel, what do we need to do, and how can it be different? And I think what Israel needs to do is to use an example from our own past, a civilian example, not a military one. I read a great book called Let There Be Water by an American journalist from New York named Siegel. And he basically wrote a book on how successful the state of Israel has been in managing that very limited resource called water. And, when you think about it, historically speaking, Israel went from being a country totally dependent on rain and with very limited access to water and dependent on good fortunes and that our enemies wouldn't be able to divert the waters of the Jordan River, to a country that now deals with water as currency and as a commodity and helps itself in terms of its foreign relations. So Israel turned a challenge into an asset, or a liability into an asset. And it's quite a miracle. All of the countries around us, they need water, and they have water scarcity. Even countries with lots of lakes, like Turkey, they don't have a steady and uninterrupted flow of water. If there's 2 months of drought in Turkey, they'll have issues. And of course, Jordan relies on water from Israel. That's part of the peace treaty. They get a lot of fresh water from the Kinneret as part of the deal. And how did Israel achieve that? And why is that relevant to PR? Because it's Israel as government, regulations, civil society, education, and then researchers and private sector. All of these parts of Israel somehow came together because there was a clear vector of what needed to be done. We need more water. And how can we conserve more water? How can we reuse? How can we find new sources for water? And how can we be more effective with the water that we use? And there's excellent example for all of these things. Israel desalinates most water of the world per capita today. It's us and maybe the Saudis and the Australians. Israel recycles the most water in the world today by a tremendous margin. Israel has excellent ways of recycling water naturally. And many things that really you don't think of that were actually also done by the government. And I mention the government because usually governments get it wrong. Governments do silly things and they're ruled by politicians who have very short-sighted perspectives.
Just to mention, this is not the current government who is
No.
responsible for those achievements.
No, but I'm it's a lot of governments. It's not one government. It was like a national plan, and I use that as I hope, and I want to develop that more as how Israel needs to address it. Now, we've seen in our history that we usually change and adapt after we suffer a lot, and after we fail and suffer, then we understand that, oh, well, we really have to address this, and then we find solutions. Many of the times it's ad hoc solutions. What Israel needs to do, I think, is to look at public relations, diplomacy, and the standing, our ability to communicate what we're doing, why we're doing to the world, as Israel looked at water in the early years of the Zionist project, and then to address it the same way. Budgeting, regulations, government, personnel, civil society, creativity, and all of the things exist in Israel. We have tremendously talented people. Most of the time the government's in the way with bureaucracy and regulations and restrictions, etc. But I think the national interest is so strong that I think we could be doing it differently. My biggest concern is that I think we'll have to go even deeper and to be in an even worse situation for there to be enough pressure in Israel by civil society and by others to say that this really is enough. Khalas, we really have to be better. And then perhaps the water model could be used as an example of hope and to be totally different. In my mind, what we need is to prioritize it and to think of it as currently a liability, but something that in the future will be turned into an asset. And I think we can do it if we educate, if we prioritize budgets, if we have excellent people in specific positions, and if government does its role in providing it. So I don't want to, there's a lot to talk about the negative. We could talk days about what we're doing wrong, but what I want to focus on is how we can do it better.
So maybe Joseph, maybe you can talk a little bit about Hasbara. I know it's not your profession, but you are also an ambassador for Israel when you go abroad, when you deal with people abroad. I imagine it's not an easy sell these days. What can be done differently? Is it possible to do it differently?
Well, as you say, it's not my profession. I think that we all, when we interact with people from outside of Israel, we are kind of ambassadors in one way or another. We have friends, we have family, and we try to give them the perspective of Israeli society. I think the challenge is that, as in everything else, it's a question of focusing resources and being professional. It doesn't matter if you want to sell a car or a kitchen. It's a question of getting the message right and repeating it and being very good at adapting the message when the circumstances change. And I think that there is for sure things which can be done to improve those abilities. And having said that, I think that the media climate today is very different than 25 years ago. I think that all our attention span is much shorter than it was 25 years ago. So what happened on October 7th, people forgot, and they remember what happened a week ago. So I think the challenge is huge, But I fully agree with Jonathan that it's a question of making it in a more professional way, and creating a strategy, and focusing on it in a way which all businesses do when they want to create a story, and they have to repeat it time after time to make it work.
But do you still think that nowadays, with everything that's going on with the war, do you think that when you deal with people abroad, are they still impressed by the Israeli professionality, the vibrance, or they have this perception that is, standoffish because of the policy of government and so forth? What is your view of that?
So I have only my limited perspective I can share with you, and when I speak with investors abroad or with colleagues from our industry, I do feel that there is a great amount of support, a great amount of understanding, and a great amount of trying to help to get through this period. I think that what happened in 7th of October was for sure something which does impact investors' view on Israel from a military perspective. I don't think that it has impacted the perspective on its economy, startup nation, or as a safe place to invest in.
Really, it didn't impact it? You think they still see Israel? That's very very good to hear, because we seem to think that everyone is sort of against us now. Are we just being paranoid?
Well, we saw at the Eurovision Song Contest, the people were for Sweden, right? So I think that for Israel, sorry, yeah. Thanks. I do think that most of the people I speak in the industry are, if I would say so, pro-Israeli and have an understanding of what happened on October the 7th, and they have a historical perspective on it, and that's my small perspective.
Miriam, when you talk to friends and people in Sweden or other countries, do you find you have to defend Israel more? Do you even try? Do you feel the need?
I did in the beginning on social media, on Instagram. My closest friends, my friends in Sweden are mostly Jewish. But on social media, I would have discussions with people that I felt were very one-sided, very just unfairly pointing a finger only at us. But it just took so much anger and energy out of me, because I realized that there was, even if my point was coming across, there wasn't somebody on the other side that was listening. And so what I did was I unfollowed them. I stopped trying. I tried in the beginning, but it just took too much energy from me. I couldn't do it. Yeah. I made sure to have the last word, and then I blocked them.
That's so Israeli. You're so Israeli. That's a great solution. Jonathan, you voiced your aversion to the bias in the media, the foreign media against Israel. I watched some of your videos. Do you feel this has changed for the better, for the worse, as we're progressing with this complicated situation?
You know, if you watch a press briefing by, let's say, Kirby or another spokesman for the US government, or even Blinken, and usually what you see on the news is maybe one sentence, like 10, 15 seconds of a news conference, and there he says something stern about Israel, that Israel has to be better, whatever it is, humanitarian, Rafah, Gaza, Pier, whatever. And it's usually more of the same. And if you have the time, then it's interesting to watch the news conferences in full and to listen to the questions. When you listen to the questions, what I've seen time and time again are loaded questions, one after another, which are very, very one-sided, and they're all trying to set up the person speaking to say something harsh or hostile or negative towards Israel. And I've seen it hundreds of times in general, and I've seen it many times during this conflict when I had time to watch the entire. And I did that because many times when I was interviewed, let's say on CNN or BBC, the anchor would be very full of self-importance, and Secretary Blinken just said that, and then something negative about Israel. What do you think that Israel can do when your closest ally says such a thing about Israel? And one of the times I responded that they never asked me what Kirby says, former Admiral Kirby, because he never says anything really negative about Israel. He never said it for about half a year, 7 months. And I said, you only take quotes that come after 9, 10, 15 questions that are all loaded against Israel. And when you finally get the statement against Israel, that's the headline, and that's the only part of a 30, 40-minute press briefing that makes it across editorial.
That's journalism for you, my friend.
Definitely. So you asked if there's bias. Unequivocally, yes. There's a tremendous bias against Israel. There is the trodden path of this is how the conflict is. Israelis are strong, white, privileged, and colonials, and the Palestinians are brown, underprivileged, poor, and suffering. And therefore, these are the bad guys, these are the good guys. We're on the side of the good guys. They're unfortunate, and we need to help them. And I've seen that hundreds of times. And I think in general it's getting worse as the war goes by, and as there's more and more images of visuals coming out of Gaza of suffering, then there's more bad press about Israel. If it bleeds, it bleeds, and it continues to bleed in Gaza, and it will continue to bleed there until the war is over. And therefore that will dominate the story, and the whole perspective will be a negative one about Israel. I think that we're now in a situation, it's kind of, if we compare it to Second World War years, right, 39 to 45, I feel that we are somewhere around 1941. And there's already battle fatigue.
Now we have 4 years to go.
Yeah, maybe not 4 years, but in the span of times where we are on the continuum, we haven't passed, we don't have the worst behind us yet, I think. And I think that there's already, understandably, there's battle fatigue in Israel, and there are Israelis that have now succumbed to the pressure being applied by international media, and they're starting to believe what international media says about Israel, because it's a relentless drip, like Chinese torture, constantly dripping on people's head, and constantly vilifying Israel and absolving Palestinians of any responsibility for everything. And you see the shift in Israeli positions, that there's more and more people who are kind of influenced by that, and it's really sad to see. Speaking of. So I think that there's definitely a trend. There's a way to tell the story for American, British,